Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this live webinar that's being organised as part of the Virtual Work Experience programme by SpringPod for Politics. Now, whether you're just getting started with the programme or if you've been cracking on with it already, we hope that you're enjoying it. We did put a lot of hard work into them for you. So don't forget, if you've got any questions or if you need support from a member of our team, you can reach out to us at any time that you like using the green chat icon in the bottom right corner of the platform. So just a few housekeeping bits before we get started. If you're a webinar veteran, then you'll know the score, but if this is your first, then it is useful to know that the talk will last 30 minutes exactly, bang on the dot. Don't forget to use the Q&A function to ask questions to our guests today. They love to answer them. That's what they're here for. They're here to help. So definitely make the most of the time that you've got. But due to the number of questions that usually come through, we may not be able to answer every single question. So if you do see a question that you like the look of, there should be an upvote button there, so you can vote for which questions you would like to get answered. So we'll put those most popular ones to our speakers who I'll introduce to you in a second. If you do miss the webinar, or if you need to leave halfway through, we've got you covered. Please do not stress, don't worry. The webinar is being recorded, and we always aim to have the recording available within 24 hours. Well, it's actually a lot less than that. You'll be able to come back probably about an hour and watch it back again if you like. So you can come back and watch it on demand at any time that you like while you're doing the programme. So in today's webinar, we're going to be talking about members of parliament, or MPs. And joining us to do that is Rory Palmer, whose current position is Senior Policy, Public Affairs and Campaign Manager at Guide Dogs for the Blind. Rory, thanks ever so much for joining us this morning. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. It's great to be able to join this webinar. I'm going to aim to provide, hopefully, some useful and informative information and reflections from my career around working in and around politics. I'm going to speak a little bit about the practical experience of different roles that I've done. I'm going to try and leave you with some hints and tips and advice on how to pursue a career and find jobs in this sector. And as Joe said there, obviously, please do feel free to ask your questions. I'm going to try and speak for about half the time we've got together and leave as much time as I can for questions, and then try and answer as many as possible. And in saying that, if there's something that you are hoping I was going to mention or cover in my introductory remarks that I don't, then please feel free to ask a question or try to prompt me to cover something that you were perhaps hoping and anticipating that I would. The first thing I want to say, though, before I start to sort of speak a little bit about my career and the roles that I've had in and around the world of politics, is just to make what I think is a really important point, and it can't be made often enough. We often hear and see in the news quite a lot of negativity and cynicism around politics sometimes. And that deeply frustrates me, because I've always taken the view that politics really does matter. It can be an incredibly positive force for good in the world, and it can certainly be, and my experience, my overwhelming experience, and that of all of my colleagues over the years and people I've worked with in different roles and different settings, is that it's a hugely rewarding area to work in. Being able to hold positions, whether elected positions or positions working for elected politicians in their staff teams, or for charities and campaign organisations trying to change the law, trying to secure better outcomes on issues and causes that matter to them. That's a hugely rewarding thing to do. It's an incredible privilege, and in many ways it isn't a job. It's far more than that. People come and work in and around politics because they care deeply about things from different political standpoints. I make no partisan points in this talk this morning. Clearly, I have my own political viewpoint that has influenced and shaped my career, but people will approach jobs in and around politics and policy and campaigning and public affairs from different political standpoints, but will always bring a commitment and a passion to secure good and positive outcomes, and that can be incredibly enriching and rewarding type of work to do. Hugely rewarding and a real a real privilege. So quick little bit about me and the roles that I've had, and in talking about that, I'll try and draw out a little bit of insight that hopefully will be of interest and use to you about those different roles. So I currently work for Guide Dogs, as Joe said, a national charity. I work in their public affairs, policy and campaigns team, where we're leading a number of high profile campaigns on issues that matter to people with sight loss and vision impairment, where every day we're trying to influence the thinking and the policy decisions of politicians in government in Westminster, the Scottish Parliament, the Welsh Assembly, and across local government as well. We're guided by people with lived experience, guide dog owners, our service users, in terms of identifying the positive change that we need to see in legislation and in policy. So we set about planning and implementing campaigns and influencing work to try to influence what happens in Parliament, in Westminster, to secure that change that we need to see to secure better outcomes and a better lived experience for people with sight loss and vision impairment. So I'm currently working in the charity sector, trying to influence what happens in politics and in policy making and decision making. But my previous role was in the European Parliament. So I was a parliamentarian at European Union level. I was one of the 73 MEPs from the United Kingdom who served in the European Parliament until the UK left the European Union in January 2020. I was a Labour Party MEP, but at European level, we joined together to form much larger political groupings in the European Parliament. I was a member of the Socialists and Democrats group in the European Parliament. The majority of our work as European parliamentarians, as MEPs, is actually carried out through our committees, where we lead and shape European legislation. I served primarily on the Environment and Public Health Committee, one of the biggest committees, one of the most influential committees in the European Parliament, where we worked across a huge range of policy areas, from climate policy to energy to food standards to public health, to looking at all the sort of different legislation that protects us as consumers. So a huge range of different issues. And certainly at European level, the political system is quite different. It's much less adversarial than the UK political system. So you have to be much more attuned to be able to negotiate and bring people together, secure consensus around different ideas, around different pieces of legislation in order to build a majority to carry your proposals and your legislative amendments through the European Parliament. The European Parliament, when I was there before the UK left, had 751 MEPs, so bigger than the House of Commons here in the UK. Actually the biggest legislature, biggest elected legislature in the world, with people from representatives from 28 member states representing all different political parties and political movements and political standpoints. So to be able to negotiate and build consensus around ideas and proposals in that setting required a very different skill set to perhaps what you might see deployed in Westminster and in the UK political system. And much like members of Parliament in the House of Commons here in the UK, MEPs carry out a constituency role as well, taking up individual casework for the people we represent, working closely with businesses, trade unions, voluntary organisations and charities right across the constituencies that we would represent, picking up issues to go and raise at European level, raise with the European Commission, which is in effect the government of the European Union, and taking forward campaigns based on the issues we were picking up in our constituencies. Prior to going to the European Parliament, I was the Deputy City Mayor and an elected councillor here in Leicester, where I'm speaking to you from this morning. I spent 10 years as an elected councillor and 6 years as a Deputy Executive Mayor in Leicester. So I also bring perspectives and reflections based on local government, which is also a critically important part of our political system in the UK. Perhaps part of the system we don't often we perhaps don't talk about and reflect on enough in terms of its important role in delivering services to people in local communities, in terms of decision making that influences and shapes what happens in our local areas. So I've been able to see all sort of different parts of the political system, including Westminster as well, because I previously worked for members of Parliament, both based in Westminster, but also in their constituency offices as well, and was very much they're able to sort of really understand and develop an in-depth first-hand understanding of the different dimensions of an MP's role and how the dots are joined from the important vital work that goes on, if you like, at the coalface in an MP's constituency, and how that shapes and drives and influences the work an MP will do in Westminster, using all the sort of different levers available to raise issues, pursue issues on behalf of constituents and on constituency matters and priorities in Westminster. And before that, I worked for a think tank in policy development and research. So based over all those roles over the best part of 2 decades or so now, I've been able to experience firsthand many different parts, many different dimensions of the political system, and many different roles, including elected positions, but also roles working with elected politicians, now with a national charity and with a think tank trying to influence and shape policy development as well. I've seen lots of different roles, lots of different dimensions to our political system, and been able to sort of develop a real sense, I think, of what's required to work in and around the political system. As I said earlier, it's a hugely rewarding place to be, and you never stop learning. There's always a huge amount to learn, and you have that opportunity to make a real difference. So one of the questions I was asked to address in this session was, how do you get to work in politics, in public affairs, in policy, in campaigns, in this, in and around the political world? Well, look, my reflection is this, that everyone's journey is different. There is no firmly established route. You will often hear, perhaps it's suggested that you have to be a lawyer to be a member of parliament, or parliamentarian, or you need to go and work for an MP. They're perfectly valid, great things to do, but they're by no means the only way into the world of politics and policy making. And indeed now, quite rightly, there is a real desire to have people with a wide range of qualifications, academic backgrounds and skills working in and around politics. Because our politics is better for that, to draw on the strength of people with different subject backgrounds, different areas of knowledge and different skills and experiences. And when I think about my former colleagues in the European Parliament, but also MPs that I know, I work with, there's a huge range of different professional backgrounds. People have gone on to elected office and indeed to work with and for politicians and campaign organisations who previously worked in the public sector, who've been doctors, who've served in the military, who've run businesses, been lawyers, who worked for charities and NGOs, who've worked for trade unions, who've been academics, who've been scientists, worked in the media, and so on. Any of those, and indeed many different professional areas beyond those, can be a route into roles in and around politics. As I said, politics is better for able to draw on people with a huge range of experience. So I would encourage you at this stage, if you're thinking about perhaps wanting to pursue a career either in policy or public affairs, campaigns, or indeed frontline politics, if you want to feel you want to run for office in the future, I'd encourage you to be thinking broadly and widely about the subject areas, perhaps about the degree courses or apprenticeships that you might want to do. There's no set firm route into these roles. Diversity of skills and experience is a good thing. But there are 2 things I do want to highlight, which I think are really, really important. And as someone who's spent the best part of 2 decades in this sector, in this industry, but has also recruited a lot of people into different roles in this sector as well, the number one thing is passion. People will want to see and understand that you have a real passion for making a difference, that this is an area of work that you deeply care about, that you want to make that positive difference and make your contribution. So think about how you might be able to demonstrate that you have a genuine and deeply held interest and passion for politics and campaigning and for making a difference. And there's lots of different ways you can do that. Perhaps we can pick up on that in the Q&A. And the other thing I want you to think about is just the range of different skills, which I think are really, really important. Your academic qualifications, your A-levels, your degree qualifications in the future, and so on. Technical qualifications will be really important. But working in politics, I think, is about some of those softer skills. Communication, teamwork, leadership, being able to juggle lots of different priorities, having to work through complex information really quickly, having to communicate with lots of different people, ranging from government ministers to constituents to business leaders, all in the course of a few hours, been able to sort of adapt your communication style to different settings, been able to plan and be organized. They are really, really important skills to be developing, and being able to think about how you can evidence when you come to apply for roles, and to be thinking about pursuing your career. So I think they're the two most important perhaps points I want to leave you with at the end of my initial comments before we jump into questions. Think about how you can build up a strong body of those skills and examples to show how you've developed and put those skills into practice. And if you want to work in and around politics, politics is about passion. It is about making a difference. It is about showing that you care about different issues and different causes. So, be thinking about, if this is an area you want to work in, be thinking now about how you can sort of start to show and demonstrate that there are issues, there are causes that you care about, that you want to make a difference on, and that you can demonstrate a real passion for wanting to work in what is a fascinating, challenging, rewarding, and in many ways unique industry and sector. It isn't just a job, but if these are areas that you're interested in and want to work in, go for it. Seize the moment. It's hugely rewarding. Been a great. I've been really, really lucky to have the opportunities that I've had, and I'm sure many of you will do so in the future and go on to make a hugely positive difference too.
Rory, thank you ever so much for taking us through that. It's been fantastic to listen to you this morning. We'll just dive right in with the questions, if that's okay. We've had plenty coming through. We'll kick off with this first one. What would you say are the most difficult parts in a career in politics?
Wow, that's a good question. So there's different levels of difficulty, I suppose. I mean, sometimes, just to be bluntly honest, the actual work can be difficult. It can be hugely complicated, hugely complex. You will have to learn about new and different issues very, very quickly. So when I was in the European Parliament, I was asked to lead for my political group on a big piece of environmental legislation related to safety and public health standards around drinking water. I don't have any formal scientific background, so I had to very, very quickly get briefed by lots of different experts, by academics and people working in that sector, to develop very quickly a body of knowledge and understanding which would enable me to take that legislation through the Parliament. So sometimes just the work itself can be complex and challenging intellectually, and you have to work really hard to understand issues very, very quickly and understand all the sort of different competing viewpoints and ideas and some of the tensions and arguments around different issues. And secondly, sometimes, you need, certainly in elected office, I think you need quite a lot of resilience sometimes. Not everyone will agree with what you say or what you do. And sometimes, you do need to sort of deploy a level of personal resilience to that. But ultimately, if you don't want to stand up for what you believe in and defend your viewpoints, then don't go into frontline politics. But I don't say that to put anybody off. I think people who do these roles do so with that passion and commitment. But, sadly, we do live in a time when, too many people can be quite negative about politicians, and will make that known. There is a place for legitimate debate and differences of opinion. But sometimes you do need to be, quite personal, have personal resilience to that, and have strategies for how you deal with that.
We've got a question here, which I think you've probably briefly touched on, but just to sum it up again for us, what pathway do you need to look at when considering a career in politics? Just remind us of what you said.
Yeah, so I think the point I was really trying to make was that I don't think there is, there's one particular sort of set route. It's not like becoming a doctor or a lawyer where you need to do have certain A levels, a certain degree, and then certain postgraduate qualifications. People with a huge range of different subject and academic backgrounds and skills will come and work in and around politics. I think the most important things to be thinking about at the moment, if this is an area of interest, is to find ways, perhaps through voluntary work with local campaigns, perhaps join a political party, get involved in election campaigns, being able to demonstrate that you have that genuine interest and passion for working in these areas, but also to be thinking, I think, when I was an MEP and I was advertising for staff to work in my office, I would get hundreds of applications. I would have hundreds of CVs to read. And of course, a lot of those will have very similar information on them in terms of A levels and degrees. I'm looking for people, as are lots of other politicians I worked with when recruiting staff, for people who can demonstrate that genuine passion for wanting to work in this sector, in these roles, but also people who can show that they've got the right skill set over and above their qualification. So skills around communication, teamwork, the ability to deal with complex information really effectively, the ability to juggle lots of different tasks at the same time, the ability to take leadership for a project or a piece of work. Those skills are absolutely critical. So I think that, they're just as important as the sort of the academic qualifications that you will be pursuing as well.
And just briefly before we move on to the next question, that is kind of a very good point. When you said people are applying for jobs in and around politics, you don't have to, obviously, if you want to be an MP, you have to be voted in by the people in your constituency to become a member of parliament. But there are so many more jobs,
there's
a huge variety of jobs that don't involve that.
That's right. Dozens of different roles. I should have made that clear, that obviously I've been really lucky to have been able to pursue part of my career in elected positions, but you don't have to do that. You don't have to sort of put yourself sort of front and center on a ballot paper and put up with some of that negativity that you get on social media and such like. As an MEP, and MPs in Westminster have office teams, teams of staff who are doing their work with the media, been their press officers, been their researchers, helping them to draft legislation, running their constituency campaigns and initiatives and projects. You can work for a charity, as I do now, or an NGO or a trade union, in a role where you're trying to influence politicians and building relationships with decision makers to try to get them to take up your views, your concerns, your proposals. You can work in think tanks and research organizations who produce policy ideas, which you then try and get the political parties and MPs to take up and support. You can pursue a civil service career. And I'm sure you probably have sessions with civil servants as part of these programs. I've never been in the civil service. I've always been too sort of overtly political to be in and around the civil service, where you have to be, neutral, in terms of the view you take politically, because you're there to advise the government of the day, whoever that government happens to be. But that's a great route into the sort of political world as well. I know lots of people who pursued really great, rewarding, exciting careers in the civil service as well, and indeed in local government as well. I mentioned local government. That's also a great place to work, pursue a career as well, if you're interested in how decision making and how policy is made and how that is then delivered to make a real tangible difference in local communities and indeed the country more widely.
We'll take another question here. Do you feel like you've been able to make more change working in the charity sector than in the European Parliament or the more traditional side of politics?
That's a really good question, and I don't think it's a simple sort of yes or no answer, to be honest. I think you make a difference in different ways. I think when I was an MEP, I knew I was able to work on legislation that was going to affect people in 28 different countries, and some of the legislation we worked on sometimes perhaps felt not remote, but by definition, I'd worked in local government, so I'd been a decision maker previously, where I was making decisions that would be incredibly tangible and visible in my local community. It wasn't always like that at European level, because you would pass legislation and quite often it would take a number of years for member states, for the national governments, to actually implement it. So perhaps sometimes there was a difference of pace. In terms of my role now in Guide Dogs, we're making a difference every day, as are many other charities as well. So I don't think it's about how whether you make more of a difference in one of those roles or the other. I think it's just a different way of influencing what happens in terms of policy and decision making, both equally valid, both impactful in different ways, but just require very, very different approaches.
We've got time for a few more questions.
Yeah.
One here says, do you have to compromise your values to get what you want? And if so, how does that make you feel?
I would say I don't feel I've ever compromised my values. I think you do sometimes, certainly in European politics, and I would also say so in local government and Westminster as well. You perhaps have to compromise on a particular aspect of a an element of a decision, for example, you may have to compromise on the wording of an amendment to legislation that you're wanting to get through if you want to win enough votes from other parliamentarians, sometimes inside your own party, never mind other parties, to support you on something. I don't think that's about compromising on your values. I think it's compromising and negotiating as a tactic in order to stay true to your values. Actually, I would say I don't feel I've compromised on my values, but I've certainly, negotiated and compromised to build consensus around particular proposals, particular amendments, particular motions that I've tabled in order to win support. But the end result, I would argue, has always been in line with my values. Perhaps not to the absolute sort of way that I would have wanted initially, but they're still in tune and still very much consistent with with my values and the outlook and the sort of final position I wanted to see. Sometimes you do have binary choices where it's A or it's B, and A is very much your position and B is the polar opposite. There are those situations sometimes, and you stay true to your values and you vote for what you believe in, and that's the approach I've always taken.
We've got time for just this one final question. I have had a skim through some of the questions that are up here as well, but I know that they've kind of already briefly been covered. So when you're asking what type of skills and values would someone need in politics, I'd suggest rewind just back a few minutes. And Rory was talking about the types of people that he looks for when he's going through CVs for people to work for him. I'll just put this final question to you. Do you prefer working in Westminster or the European Parliament, and why?
That's a good question. I've been really, really lucky, to be honest. I've enjoyed all the sort of different roles that I've been able to sort of pursue in my career so far. They've all been enjoyable. They've all been rewarding for the reasons I outlined earlier. On a personal level, I do miss working in the European Parliament purely because it's so different to our political system here. It's people from lots of different countries speaking lots of different languages, bringing lots of different approaches to politics. It's a real melting pot of ideas and dialogue and discussion, just in a way that Westminster isn't. I'm not saying it's better than Westminster. I'm not saying I enjoyed it more. I've enjoyed all my roles, on an equal basis, to be honest. I know that sounds a bit of a politician sort of answer, but it's absolutely true. And I think that's the most important thing. I would leave you with this. Whatever you do, whatever you choose to do in your career and the roles that you pursue, just enjoy it. And if it doesn't work out, and there've been moments in my career and my colleagues' careers where things don't always work out as planned. If things don't work out, if you're not enjoying it, then do something else. Don't be afraid of changing direction, changing role, and trying something new. Be happy and enjoy what you do in the future. And on that note, I notice our time is up, so I wish you all good luck with the rest of this program and indeed your own future career endeavours as well.
Rory Palmer, thank you ever so much for taking the time to be here this morning, and thank you for answering all of those questions. That's a wrap on this session. Thank you to everyone for sending your questions in. Once again, thank you to Rory, Senior Policy, Public Affairs and Campaigns Manager at Guide Dogs for the Blind. Just a reminder, don't forget to get all of your work submitted and the programme completed by November 12th in order to be eligible for your certificate. That's November 12th. You can find all of the important dates in Module 1 if you need reminding. But that's it from us. Good luck with the rest of the programme, and we'll see you all real soon. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.